for the Giants part of it, that doesn't surprise me. The Maras were given this team. If you go back to the '80s, the league had to step in and help the Giants with George Young. If you have to go back to that time, because the Giants were a disaster throughout the '70s and before that. You get that Parcells, they luck into Parcells, they pick the right guy with Parcells, and since then it's been a pretty good history up until this picture that I wanted to show you, which is the famous Love Boat picture of the Giants back. Speedy, when did this picture happen?
In January 2017.
On Justin Bieber's boat. And I remember Odell Beckham, after the season was over, this was the game before the playoffs against Green Bay. I remember it. Yeah. They went to Florida to hang out with Justin Bieber. All the guys, really the whole offensive
receivers
side
and
of the
corners.
ball. Yep.
Uh-huh. The entire group.
Yep.
They've been pretty much garbage since that picture. They were garbage in the playoff game, and then they've been garbage since. They had the one game, you said it, Daniel Jones. We talk about all the time that Vikings team was one of the worst good record teams of all time. They should have been like 3 or 4 wins worse than they were according to advanced statistics. So we kind of got fooled into Daniel Jones. You can say Shane got fooled into Daniel Jones.
Well, hold on one second. You keep saying they got fooled in. They didn't do the right by him. I mean, I don't think they did anything right by him. I looked at Gettleman. Look at what Gettleman did for him. He had Saquon Barkley there. They had no wide receivers. They went after Galladay. How long was Galladay there before he was an absolute joke? They overpaid for him because he didn't want to go over there. He really wanted to stay in Detroit. So, I mean, there was a lot of questions, obviously, to that position. And I understand what Giant fans are looking at. They look at numbers and they look at the PFFs and all these statistics the analytics that people are using right now. But at one point, you saw what you can do with Daniel Jones if you have a great player in Saquon Barkley. Now, if they put wide receivers around Daniel Jones, he was a competent quarterback. I don't know if you win a Super Bowl, but I remember when a lot of people in 2007, when that Eli Manning was not playing well, and I remember we were talking about this. Manning came off a really, really bad game against Minnesota, and everybody was thinking, "Hey, yeah, I know. That's why I mentioned it." And people thought, "Hey, you know what? Maybe Tom Coughlin isn't the guy. Maybe Eli Manning isn't the guy." After they decided to part ways with Kurt Warner, and where did Kurt Warner go? Kurt Warner went over there to Arizona and took the Arizona Cardinals all the way to the Super Bowl against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I understand why everybody doesn't like Daniel Jones, but you can't blame this all on Daniel Jones. You blame this on the executives in office. Joe Shane. That's his fault because he didn't give him.
I want to blame John Mara a little bit, though, because John Mara, despite the fact you could see he wants to win, unlike maybe what you're seeing in the other part of the New York facilities. But the John Mara,
you're going to bring up the
Jets
again.
He might not want to. He might not want to do it the right way. He wants to do it his way, and his way has never worked since he's taken over. Ernie Accorsi built that previously before he really got involved. And Ernie Accorsi built that structure. Tom Coughlin was the caretaker of that structure and built that culture. When they let Coughlin go instead of Jerry Reese, that was the biggest mistake that they ever made in the history of this franchise. It was a death knell to the last 10 years that we've had. It's been absolute garbage since Coughlin's been gone, since that, that good regular season with McAdoo and the lucky year, with Daniel
really
Jones.
Spagnuolo.
Really Spagnuolo. It's a good point.
I remember Giant fans threw Ben McAdoo under the bus too. I don't know if Ben McAdoo would have been good or successful in this league. But as soon as he pulled Eli Manning and put Geno Smith in, which, by the way, Geno Smith went to Seattle and became a starting quarterback, an MVP candidate after that, I think a lot of Giant fans threw him under the bus and didn't think that Ben McAdoo was anything good. And I understand. I know Tom Coughlin didn't want Ben McAdoo there as his offensive coordinator, but if you look at Eli Manning's numbers when Ben McAdoo was the offensive coordinator for the 2 years he was there, he had some of the best numbers he's ever had as a starting quarterback. So I know a lot of Giant fans didn't like Ben McAdoo. I know a lot of Giant fans didn't like Daniel Jones, and I know a lot of Giant fans right now don't like Mr. Brian Daboll. But nevertheless, if you put him in the right position to succeed, they will. And I don't think they were.
The bigger problem is, why are you keeping Joe Shane to pick a project quarterback when you know that project quarterback won't win in the first year. Because Cam Ward, let's face it, if Cam Ward was in the draft last year, he goes after Michael Penix, probably,
Yes.
most likely. So that wouldn't be in the top 10. So you're taking a project quarterback with a guy who's got a 1-year shelf life right now. How are you what is he supposed to do? He's not going to want to take that guy. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Giants do not go quarterback at the top of this draft, because Cam Ward's a project. And if they believe in Shedeur, I guess it's Shedeur. I mean, you hear it might be Shedeur at 3. But if it's not, and they don't believe in him, because a lot of people don't, a lot of people think he's way overrated. Maybe he'll be successful in the league, but he doesn't have the intangibles and the talent that scream at you first round pick, really, except for the last name. What are they going to do? They got to go with a veteran if they're going to keep these guys on. But it shows they shouldn't have kept them.
So you're going to bet on a quarterback that has, 2 years left in the league, and you think you're going to win a Super Bowl with him? You need a guy that you can build your team around. You have a guy like Neighbors that's going to be a star. You want to build an offensive line.
There's so many pieces away.
I understand that, but the one piece that you can build your team. They said the same thing about the Commanders. They said the same exact thing about the Commanders. Remember during the season last year? I'm not last year. The year before, they traded away 3 or 2 of their best defensive players. They let them go. They traded them for a bunch of a bag of balls. They said, okay, you can have Sweat, you can have this guy, you can have that guy. We don't need him. And then at the end of the season, they brought in Dan Quinn, and everybody says Dan Quinn has a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. And what did they do? What was the big thing they needed? They needed to bring in a young quarterback. And what did they do? They had the number 2 pick. They went after Jaden Daniels. They knew, and they thought they brought Cliff Kingsbury in, who I think is a great offensive-minded coach. Not a great coach. We don't know if he can do it again. We'll see what he can do probably next year, because I do believe he's going to get a coaching job the year after next. But I do believe that if you get the right guy in place as your quarterback, it changes your whole roster. It changes your whole team. And I think Cam Ward's the guy. And if the Giants don't see that after scouting him for 3 years, when the Giants, 2 months ago said that Cam Ward has been on their radar for 3 years, it just shows you that Joe Shane doesn't trust his eye for talent.
Well, look, that might be true. As far as not trusting, if I would be doubting a lot of things after this past season, especially.
Why? He had a good draft. You said it yourself.
Look, I'm not talking about the draft. We know what we're talking about here. The graphics are on the bottom. It's Saquon Barkley. It's one of the worst decisions a general manager has ever made. They replaced him with Drew Lock, who they made a third-string quarterback for $5 million. Motor Singletary for $6 million. That's 11 out of the 13 and change Saquon got. And I'm sure I can find a backup corner or a backup guard that got $2.5 million on the roster. That's what they decided to do instead of paying for Saquon Barkley. They paid for a bag of balls. That is unbelievable. A fireable offense. And now they're in a situation where you have a general manager who might not want to take a quarterback who can't win in his first year. That's what we're looking at right now. And a head coach who clearly doesn't want that, because he knows his ass is gone if he doesn't win.
But you're not going to win. Now, if you get Cam Ward,
trade back and get a line.
If you get Cam Ward, you don't have to worry about going after and gunning. Not really.
You're not going to win with Cam Ward.
You're not going to win this year anyways. You're not beating the Commanders because you need a future. You need a future.
But why keep Shane and Dable if you are punting on this year?
Because I don't know. You asked John Mara that. I'm not the owner.
That's my criticism. That's what I'm saying. John Mara is making this is one of the dumbest decisions ever. Why would you keep these guys on if they're project quarterbacks, or you got to trade for basically Aaron Rodgers, 2 years left in the league, give him a shot?